Hello everyone, I'm Charming Man 93. Some of you may have heard of me, most of you probably haven't, but I'm hosting the Tuesday edition of The Breakfast Club today, and I've been waiting for this for a long time now, and what better way to kick it off than with a topic that I've covered a few times on my channel, but not very often. It's in the broad scope of the free speech thing, and this is about humour and comedians, what they can joke about and what they can't joke about. So let's just kick things off with what I think about humour and what we should be allowed to joke about and what we should not joke about. Now, I'd like to make a distinction. There's joking about things and there's making joke things. Now, I think you can joke about almost any topic. Pretty much everything is off limits to me. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to joke about everything and everyone all the time. I mean, context matters, all sorts of stuff matters. And sometimes I can't be bothered, sometimes it might be a bit rude in that situation, and I might not want to do that. In principle, I think you should be able to joke about any topic you want to, any person, anything really. Why? Well, because humour is a very good coping mechanism for terrible things that have happened to people, especially in my culture, at least the northern part of the culture. Humour was used very regularly to make light of the plight of the working class people and how they could basically just make themselves feel better about, working in a cotton factory for 16 hours a day or however long it was until the regulations. And next thing you know, this developed a comedic tradition, which next thing you know was being played in music halls and then later on in stadiums in the next 100 odd of years. So joking about these terrible conditions and making fun of yourself and other people and the poverty and the strife actually, one, helped them survive, but also developed a comedic tradition that until very recently it was going very strong. I think if we told these people not to joke about the fact that they were working in a cotton factory and losing limbs and joking about all these things, they might, one, not lasted very long. We wouldn't have had this comedic tradition, and I think that would have just been against their free speech. Now, before we get back to joking about things, what about making joke things? And what do I mean by making joke things? Well, for example, prank calls, or doing pranks out on the street, or doing any kind of thing like that, really. It depends on the context, and it depends on what you're making a joke thing. For example, I wouldn't ever make a joke accusation to the police about somebody. I got into a scrap on Twitter about that a couple months back, but they decided that that meant I was against joking about the topic of said accusation, not actually against the act of doing the joke thing. I think that's where the confusion came from, and I was labelled a hypocrite, when really that's not hypocritical. Nobody in their right minds, unless they were incredibly horrible, would ever make a joke rape accusation or a joke assault accusation, because especially if that's labelled at a man, in the regard to the former, you're gonna see a lot of angry pitchforks and flames going about to his house as soon as you say that, because as we know, these things will tar a man's reputation for life, no matter if he's found innocent or even guilty for that matter. Likewise, I don't agree with these fake pranks and these so-called social experiments that people like Joey Salad likes to do. Basically, he will make a situation up. For example, one of the most controversial ones was going around, in fact this is many different videos, he was basically making black people look out to be horrible people and basically ill-informed or just completely close-minded, because he would go out into these communities or these ghettos with All Lives Matter signs, or he would leave a car out with Trump signs on, and he will pay actors, remember these are actors, they're fake, to go out, trash the car or to attack him himself, even though it's completely fake, even though it's totally, utterly silly, because it's unlikely to happen. The fact remains is that he is making these people look bad. He's making the whole community look bad. He's not saying this particular group of black people, it's all black people. That's what he's trying to insinuate. Now, whether or not there's a political thing behind it, or it's just a bad thing that he's ended up doing, like he's made it out to be something that it's not, I don't know. But those are things that I disagree with. Sure, you can joke about black people, you can joke about Trump, you can joke about politics, that's fine, but when you're actually making a whole demographic look bad, At what point is this simply just a joke? He's not meant to be taken seriously. Still, I don't think we should stop him from doing it. He can still do it if he wants, but he has to accept the consequences of said actions. Mainly a lot of criticism and a lot of backlash. Now let's get back to joking about things. Now, look, this is not a recent thing. This will never ever stop, I think, until we actually decide to, oh yeah, we better stick by these principles that we hold so dear, like freedom of expression and free speech. But comedians have always been told to not joke about things, to not talk about things, to not say this, to not say that, because it hurts people's feelings, or it's obscene, that's a big one, or it's blasphemous, or any adjective you can think of. I can think of a modern example right now by the name of Mike Ward, who was recently fined 42,000 Canadian dollars for making a joke about a Quebec teen. Now, it was a joke. He didn't mean it, but still, in Canada's situation with the current leader, Pope Trudeau, basically, these people can be sent to jail or fined for saying things that somebody disagrees with, or because they feel threatened, or they feel offended, or they feel harassed. It's all based on feelings and not logic, and not due process either. Now, this is not new, of course. George Carlin was arrested for his 7 words that you can't say on TV routine. Likewise, Lenny Bruce, 10 years before him, was arrested based on obscenity for a schmuck routine where he says cocksucker live on stage. Likewise, 2 decades after that, although he never got arrested, Chris Rock was very harshly criticised and really attacked for his black people versus niggers routine, where he basically goes through the list of reasons why he dislikes this certain section of the black community who are feckless, they don't do anything, they cause trouble for black people, they make black people look really bad, they make them full of misery, and it's time for them to go. But people thought he was being racist to his own people, even though he wasn't. He was pointing out truths about that particular community. Such was the backlash that he never did a routine like that again, or at least that particular one. Now, we can't have reactions like this happening, because if this type of thing is normalised like it is now, well, people will stop talking about particular subjects. You know, maybe things that we need to talk about. If normal people, and not just journalists or politicians, are going out there and telling these people what they can and cannot say, and actually drumming up a backlash and a critical response to these people to try and force them not to say these things, like they did to Chris Rock and George Carlin, Mike Ward and Lenny Bruce, well then there becomes a whole culture of people being too afraid to bring up subjects in comedy which might have to be talked about, things that people need to talk about to create some kind of dialogue, and these dialogues don't happen because people are too afraid to bring them up in fear of being called racist, sexist, homophobic, obscene, etc, etc. This actually plays into the hands of politicians and corporations and all the powers that be and people who don't want you to talk about a particular thing because it hurts their interests, because now you can't talk about that, and they're free to do whatever they want because they can't be criticised. Because if they can't be criticised, they're free to do any bad thing that they want to do, and there's no one that can stop them unless somebody is brave enough to put their head up the parapet and get a headshot. And there's no more better example than this comedy club in the UK that has literally listed a ban of the types of jokes that you can't make. Now, the irony is not lost on me that it's the Mail, the Daily Mail, talking about this, as rightly pointed out by Dr. Vanderkam when he brought this up. Let's just get into it. It's the story that matters, not who wrote the story. Now, this club is called the Lolitics Comedy Club, and it has made acts abide by rules for enforced niceness. Jokes cannot be sexist, racist, homophobic, and disableist, I think they mean ableist, etc., because for some reason comedians can't make jokes about people, and for some reason their audience, or at least what they think their audience can't handle, are jokes about either themselves or other people. Which makes you wonder, why are these people making a comedy club, and why are this clientele going to this comedy club? I mean, don't you go to comedy clubs to be expected to laugh about things you might not laugh at in normal polite society, or you shouldn't laugh at, or laugh at yourself even though you're getting brutally roasted? Isn't that the whole point of going to a comedy performance? But not only have they banned that, they've banned ironic comments and banter with the audience to create a safe space. Now what's funny is they don't extend the same thing to conservatives. because you can't joke about all these people, but you can joke about them, do all those jokes. But then again, this is the Daily Mail, and they do the same thing to left-wingers and other people all the time. That's where the irony comes in, people. Now, also, they've stopped interaction between the audience and the comedian, which is an incredibly important part of stand-up comedy. Like, what's the point in going there if you can't talk to them? Basically, the comedian can't ask them questions one-on-one, and they in turn cannot heckle him or make jokes to him in response. Now, even though heckling is bad sometimes, it actually somehow makes it even better, because there's like a back and forth, and it can be really funny or really irritating depending on which person is doing the heckling and which comedian is roasting said particular heckler. We all know some of the greatest comedic moments comes from heckles. For example, Bill Hicks's absolute crazy rant when one person shouted Freebird, although that said he was heckling him quite a lot throughout the entire gig. But that created one of the most amazing comedic moments ever. In fact, this club has gone so extreme that you can't even joke about the French. How the hell can this be a British comedic institution if you can't say, I hate the French, ironically? If you can't make a French joke? This is like the basis of British humour for God knows how long, like nearly 1,000 years. In fact, he even tells comedians not to say specific words like rape, as it may be triggering to people. But then again, why would these people go to this place anyway if they're going to get triggered by words? Or how do they even cope in real life if they hear this word all the time? And again, I think this boils down to them patronising the audience and these people who they think they're protecting. They think that disabled people, that people who are ethnic minorities or religious minorities or anything like that can't handle anything because they're either too weak-minded to do so, or they're too weak to put up with the apparent white comedian up on stage taking the mick out of them. And we know damn well that most of these people can take a joke and they can dish it back as well. And this is where it boils down to. It's patronising. This whole, oh, you can't joke about that because of somebody's feelings, is usually done by a moral minority or majority who thinks they can speak for everyone and everything. And basically these people are patronising idiots. Anyway, people, I think I've made my point very clear. I think we should allow comedians to joke about anything and anyone. No topic should be off limits, because as we can see, these things create dialogues. They can help people come to terms with bad events that happen in their lives, which is why I did things like not saying particular words like rape. Might not be triggering, it might actually be cathartic for these people. Now, obviously, there's a difference between joking about somebody or something and making joke things like joke accusations, joke pranks that make people look really bad, like Joey Salads. And I think there needs to be some kind of difference made between the two, but otherwise, joke about anything you want. Anyway, people, next up is Nathan Brendan Masters, and I'm bowing out for today. I'll see you all later.